إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Praise be to Allah. We seek His help and His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil of our own souls and from our own bad deeds. Whomsoever Allah guides will never be led astray. And whomsoever Allah leaves astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, the One, having no partner. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His slave and messenger. So today, I'm going to address something that our Sheikh Suhail alluded to in this morning's Eid Khutbah. He mentioned some of the crises that are going on in the world today. And indeed, we do live in a world of crisis. And we hear a lot of solutions to particular crises and particular problems. You can do this or that. This party has this solution. That party has that solution. However, I'm not going to talk about specific crises in particular areas of the country or the world. I think it's just as important, if not more important, to understand and train ourselves, first as individuals and then as a community, to deal with crises. So in that case, whether it's losing a job or surviving an earthquake, God forbid, you'll be equipped and ready to deal with whatever the crisis is. Today also commemorates the greatest crisis in the life of one of the greatest human beings, Ibrahim alayhi salam. And his example can instruct us on how we can deal with crises in a particular way and in particular roles in our lives. And I'll get to that in the second khutbah. But first, when we're hit with a difficulty or maybe even a calamity, what's the first thing that we need to do? So we need to learn how to control ourselves, to control our reactions. This isn't to suppress those reactions. It's to control them, to learn self-discipline. And the greatest self-discipline is in the submission to Allah. Submitting to Allah, as our faith calls us to do, engenders, it creates, and demands humility. And true self-control comes through this type of humility. And what are you doing when you submit to Allah? At the very basic level, what you're doing is understanding the limits of your power. You put your forehead literally on the ground in front of Allah and acknowledge His complete power. And it is from this humility that you start to build self-discipline and self-respect. If you look at people who have lots of power in their hands, political leaders, they are actually fooled by the power that they hold in their hands. And that power leads them astray. A king, a person who has the ultimate power, may think himself or herself, as in the case of England, to be supreme in their land. That is, until his or her last breath is choking out of their throat. They would then feel regret. Just as Fir'aun did, as the waves crushed him beneath their power, rendering his worldly power that he thought was literally supreme, his armies and his command useless. And sometimes when we hear examples like this in khutbahs, we think, oh yes, the Fir'aun was so bad, the president is so bad. But you should ask yourself what you have power over in your life. Your children, your employees, your co-workers, your parents. And then ask yourself how you exercise that power. With humility, the humility that we're supposed to learn through submitting to Allah, or with arrogance. Sometimes arrogance disguised as righteousness. The way you react to power and powerlessness, to being a parent or a child, a boss or a worker, tells you everything you need to know about yourself and this first step of Islam. This step of gaining humility through submitting to Allah. So this is a convenient way to test yourself by asking yourself, how am I with the people that I have influence and power over? And that requires a great deal of honesty. And when you look at yourself and how you deal with power when it's in your hands, it will also tell you something about how you deal with power when it's taken away. And that's often what a crisis is. When you have power taken away from you. So you lose your job, you show up, you have a good job, you lose it. Now you have no income. An earthquake happens. Your house is damaged. You've lost control and you've lost power. So now, how do you deal with that? We, in the example of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in fact, in his first experience of prophethood, we have the key example about how to deal with crisis and how to deal with powerlessness. So Muhammad, as you all know, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to go to a remote cave called the cave of Hira. It was outside of the city of Mecca. And he used to sit there and contemplate. No one was around for miles. And one time, as he was sitting in the darkness, he heard a voice that was terrible and awesome. Awesome in that it inspired fear and awe in him. Jibreel alayhi salam, as he commanded him, he overwhelmed him. He squeezed him almost until the Prophet ﷺ couldn't breathe. And he commanded him 3 times to read. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. The Prophet ﷺ was completely shaken by this experience. And as he ran away from the cave and ran down the mountain to get away from this experience that he had had, which is often sometimes what we do when we're experiencing crisis, right? You run. And the overwhelming feeling that he felt was anxiety and fear. The scholars of Sirah have told us that he was fearing, in fact, that he had become possessed or he had lost his mind. SubhanAllah, this is the greatest human being, had this fear. What this tells us at its most basic is that it's okay to be scared or anxious. It's okay to feel fear. Sometimes when we're going through a crisis, people will tell us to be patient. In fact, they won't tell us, they'll beat us over the head with patience. They'll say, be patient, be patient, be patient. But what they don't tell you is that it's okay. The first thing you should know, or you should tell someone when they're experiencing crisis, is that it is okay to feel anxiety and fear. If Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did, you can too. It does not indicate necessarily a weakness of faith or a weakness of character. Important thing is, how did the Prophet ﷺ respond to feeling this crisis, to undergoing this? And by the way, when he was running down the mountain, he turned back around and Jibreel ﷺ presented himself to the Prophet ﷺ in his full glory and his full might. He stretched from horizon to horizon. Imagine that. Elsewhere in the Quran, Allah tells us, if this revelation had been given to a mountain, the mountain would have been destroyed from the stress of it. And this revelation was given to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. This experience, the ultimate stress. So after feeling this and seeing Jibreel ﷺ, he's not reassured, he's still shaken. But what does he do? He sought help. He sought help from those that were closest to him. And the one who was closest to him was his wife, Khadija radiallahu anha. So that's number one. If you're feeling stress and if you're feeling stress and anxiety, seek help from those you trust, from those who are near you. Second, we go to our mother Khadija radiallahu anha, who gives an example to all of us in how she responded to her spouse's stress. And I said spouse because this counts for husbands and wives, both. The first thing she did was cover him with a blanket. She comforted him. The second thing she did was reassure him. She said, you cannot be possessed or insane. You worship Allah. You are a sincere and good man. And the third thing she did was seek out knowledgeable help. She went to her cousin, Waraqa bin Nawfal, and she said, this has happened to my husband Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you help me? And this tells us, when you are dealing with someone as a spouse or as a close person, dealing with someone in crisis, reassure them. Tell them it's going to be okay. Tell them I'm here for you. Then seek help from somebody who's knowledgeable. A doctor, a therapist, education counselor, something of that nature. Somebody who's knowledgeable. Somebody loses a job in IT, speak to somebody who's in that field, who can help you. And then what Waraqa did also instructs us. Because Waraqa bin Nawfal was a third party. He was the cousin of Khadija radiallahu anha. So he's helping Muhammad ﷺ deal with this crisis. And when Muhammad came to him, Waraqa bin Nawfal said, you are the prophet of God. And you will face great opposition from your people. And the third thing he said is, if I'm alive, I will support you. So, number one, as a third party dealing with our co-workers, etc., we know we have to be honest. We have to be honest in our assessment. At the same time, we have to be caring and gentle in delivering that assessment. Because Waraqa bin Nawfal said, if I'm alive, I'll support you. And he even kissed the Prophet ﷺ on his forehead, according to the scholars of Sirah. And this shows us how we can deal with extended family members or friends that are undergoing crisis. And you know what this brings us to is that that Allah Azza wa Jal has given us each other. He has blessed us with each other, family, friends, and the greater community of believers as a network of support. And He even tells us this in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. And indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. So subhanAllah, this is Allah telling us that He's put us here in our numbers and our diversity in order for us to support each other. And in the second half of the khutbah, I'm going to describe how Ibrahim alayhi salam exemplified support for each other in the parent-child relationship, which is extremely important. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Make dua to Allah. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So, as I mentioned, we have the example of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam that we are commemorating today on how we can deal with crisis in a parent-child relationship. And let's be honest, all of us are parents or children, and the most crises that we get are those in this particular relationship, as a kid and as a mom or a dad. So in the Quran, Allah tells us, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي الْمَنَامِ إِنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى قَالَ يَا أَبَتِ أَفْعَلْ مَا تُؤْمَرُ سَتَجِدُنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And when he reached with him the age of exertion or majority, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said, O my son, Ismail, indeed I have seen in a dream that I must sacrifice you, so see what you think. He said, Ismail, O my father, do as you are commanded, you will find me, if Allah wills, of the steadfast. This is an amazing ayah of the Quran, and there are a lot of lessons in it. And for this particular khutbah and understanding how to deal with stress, this is a father who's had a great burden and a great stress put on him. Allah is guiding him to sacrifice his son for Allah. And for all the issues that you may have with your sons, imagine that you had to sacrifice him. And it's an unbelievable trial. And how did Ibrahim alayhi salam respond to that? He shared the burden of his trial with his son. And not only that, he trusted his son and Allah enough to ask his son's opinion. He said, what do you think? And as sons and as children in general, we can see the way Ismail alayhi salam responded. He trusted Allah and he trusted his father. enough to say, if this is really from Allah, then you do what you have to do and you will find me amongst the patient. And in the end, Allah did not fail them. He replaced Ismail alayhi salam with the animal, and the animal was sacrificed, and that's why we sacrifice today, to commemorate their sacrifice. But in the way that they dealt with this sacrifice, we also have a lesson. So we can look at the examples of our leaders that Allah has given us to show us how we should deal with each other and how we should support each other in these times of crisis. For ourselves, look at the Prophet ﷺ as a spouse. For our spouses, look at Khadija radiallahu anha, who was supportive and made herself knowledgeable about the issue. And for friends and advisors, we can look at Waraqa bin Nawfal, who gave his honest opinion in a gentle and beautiful way. And for parents and children, we can see Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam. May Allah be pleased with them, who dealt with each other with trust and openness and trust in Allah. So I want to end with, we have these examples of how to live our lives and deal with the crises that are in front of us. We also have the tools that Allah has given us to cultivate the sense of humility and the trust in Him. That's the foundation of all of these relationships. As I mentioned, the Shahada, which is about humility, the Salat, which reminds us day to day, the Zakat, which puts that humility into action by giving to others, fasting in Ramadan, which forces you for a month every year to, by yourself, revisit that connection with Allah, and Hajj, which is physically returning to Him, which is what many of our brothers and sisters did yesterday. Following these steps, these simple 5 pillars, will empower all of us to deal with life's challenges and, inshallah, the challenges of our time. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Ya Allah, our Lord, grant us good in this world and good in the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of the fire. وأقم الصلاة.